Hi, Lieutenant Commander. Colonel. Sorry. Nice to meet you.
How
Um,
are you today?
yeah, I'm doing good. So, as you can see, I am somewhere, right, that you might recognize. I'm on an aircraft carrier. This is in the metaverse. So, this is how I wanted to do our podcast while meeting, in a sense. I've been reading your book, and I've got a lot of notes that I want to discuss. So let me show you the agenda for today.
Okay.
Right. So essentially, wait, let me just close this backdrop. Essentially, I want to uh, first talk to you about good leadership for the future and how to cultivate it. Right. Then I would like to hear about your view of the future of warfare. Um, and then I'll tell you about my view of the future in warfare, and then I'll show you a bit about my thoughts about autonomous warfare. That's where we're heading, in my view. And the last thing would be Zero Tree. It's the reveal of something we're working on. I think you might like it.
Okay.
So, yeah. What do you think is good leadership for the future, and how should one learn to cultivate it?
Yeah. So I don't think leadership changes that much. Just
Mm-hmm.
how you lead, the tools you use to lead certainly change. I mean, today we have the internet, we have Zoom, we have all the social media type stuff, virtual stuff that we can use. But I don't think that changes the principles of what you do to be a good leader. I think servant leadership is still good. It's still the way to go, whether it's today, 100 years ago, or 100 years from now. And I think that taking care of people and and doing the right things is still going to be the right way to be a leader. It just
Exactly.
we will have different tools that we don't even know about yet. And certainly, like I said, I mean, I still today. I mean, today I now use Zoom. I use uh, meetings. I go to
Yeah,
meetings. I use all kinds of
exactly.
virtual things to get my message across. But it's still leadership. The principles are still the same.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Let's see. So I've been struggling with, well, not necessarily with leadership. Like during my read of your book, I actually realized I'm doing all of the exact same things, right? So actually, the problem I'm having is internal. So what do you do when you are like mentally ahead in terms of planning, etc., but your team or people that you want to lead aren't aware of all of that. So how do you deal with this whole inconsistency in where you are and where your team is? Like,
Yeah, so I think the whole key to that is culture. You got to build the culture that you want in an organization. And I had this discussion, I don't know, about 3 weeks ago with somebody, and I said to him mistakenly, I said,
yeah,
culture doesn't just happen. And then I said,
that's
well,
true.
that's not true. I said, culture does just happen, not the culture you want to happen.
Exactly.
If you want the culture you want, you got to spend some time, resources, energy, training to get there. And oh, by the way, once you get it there, you got to continue because you're going to have
Yeah.
people leave and new people come in. So it's a constant battle
Yeah,
to
and you
keep
need to set up a
culture the way you
process
want
for that, right?
it. You do.
So what I noticed was, um, to me, all of this information was very quick to take in from your book because it's very similar to like developing software. It's like an efficient machine that you're trying to have running, right? So all of this information flow, the feedback to people so they know they're doing a good job. Um, Letting them speak and understanding what they can do or want, right? So you have this whole, uh, you have a power as a leader that they don't have, but they have the know-how. So you need to like efficiently bring their know-how to your power, right? And that basically amplifies both of you, and then you
Absolutely.
become one.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that, here's the problem. If you're a leader and you're not using the people who work for you or with you or in your organization, if you're not using their ideas, then you're only using your ideas and your knowledge. And I don't care how good you are, there's always somebody who has a good idea that you can
Mm-hmm.
use. And so you got to be able to do that. You got to be able to listen to people who, in a lot of organizations, there are people that that's all they do is whatever that problem you're trying to solve, that's what they do for a living. So go down and ask them what they would do, and you'd be surprised.
Yeah,
Probably
exactly.
nobody's ever gone down and asked them.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think a lot of leaders also need leadership on being a leader, which is quite ironic, and that's what you're doing, right? But I think that's very important because to be a good leader, you need to know your strengths and your weaknesses. It's like being the king in chess, right? You can only like do one step. You have to rely on all of those other people with very specific skills around you to
That's
make
right.
it all come together. And
That's right.
if you, yeah,
I
right?
always tell people if you think that you're going to do all this stuff by yourself as a leader, then you're sadly mistaken because it takes the organization. And for them to do that, they have to understand what your vision and your plan is. And as long as they do that, then they can help you get to where you want to go. And I
Mm-hmm.
always tell people if I go to your organization and I ask and I go around and I start figuring out what's wrong, one of the first things I do is I go around and I ask people, so what's the vision and the plan for this organization?
Yeah, that's a good one.
And yeah,
Yeah,
and if the lowest person can't answer that question, you got a problem in your organization.
exactly. Okay, that's clear, right? So, yeah, so what do you think about the future of warfare? Like, what's your interpretation? Like, you have this whole inlet at the military, I guess, right? So you kind of know what's going on. So, what is your view of that?
Yeah, so I've been out of the military a while. I mean, I retired from the Army in 2009, although I've been associated with the Army as a Department of
Mm-hmm.
Defense civilian, but I do very specifically, I recruit for Army ROTC. Doesn't mean I don't keep track with some things and do some reading, but I don't have an inside track anymore. But I think the future. There's lots of things that you can see going on right now that are pointing toward where the future is going. I mean, you got hypersonic weapons and
Yeah.
transport. You got drones. I think drones are going to be a huge part of
Mm-hmm.
whatever happens in the future. Um, I don't. That doesn't mean that I don't believe because I don't believe that the normal things that we associate with warfare are going away. We're still going to have infantry. We're still going to have tanks. We're still going to have those type of things.
Mm-hmm.
I think that these other things will enhance those things and maybe take a lead in some things. But we're always going to have soldiers on the ground, in tanks, on foot, in infantry, armor, artillery. Those type of things are always going to have to be there. I think the tools they use are going to get
Yeah,
better, more deadly, more lethal.
exactly. And
And I
more
think that the
protective.
tools
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
the logisticians are going to use to supply those people,
Mm-hmm.
that's where you're going to see a huge change, I think.
Okay, you've got a really good view on this. So I share the same sentiments, right? So, oh yeah, about hypersonics. So China is doing a lot of developments, and I'm not sure. Well, it feels like the U.S. is worried about it, but honestly, like just looking at what SpaceX is doing, just almost every week, just launching many satellites, etc. Right? That also shows what kind of launch capacity the U.S. has in terms of those developments. But it's crazy. Like hypersonic weapons could, after they're in orbit, right, and they get the go ahead to launch, they could, in a sense, in 10, 20 seconds already hit their targets.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
it's pretty scary.
yeah. So, what would you do about that? Like, what's your perspective on that?
So I'm again, I'm kind of
No,
out
no,
of the
no. I
loop on
know
it,
you're
but
out
I
of the
think,
loop, right?
but
Yeah.
if I was king for the day, I would say that we have to. I think that something that President Trump did, whether you like him or not, I think something that he did what really made a lot of sense. He created the Space Force, and uh,
Oh yeah,
and
and the
I think
Guardians.
we needed that in our arsenal, and so
Mm-hmm.
those people have to. I'm sure that part of their job, is to figure that piece out. But I think that just from a guy
Mm-hmm.
who is looking at the big picture, I would say that you got to have some type of capability to destroy um, things in space if need be. I know that
Exactly.
I know there are rules and
Mm,
regulations and world signed agreements, but I think you need to have that capability just in case, because believe me, I believe 100% that China and Russia are working on those capabilities.
yeah, so now that we're going into those agreements, right? So there's some international agreement about, well, it's a treaty of outer space, right? So in terms of like which weaponry you can use, etc. But the whole problem with that is, like, the moment someone has superiority, all of those treaties go out the window, right?
Absolutely. We've seen it throughout history.
Yes, so it's more of like a stopgap, but it's, I would say, um, it's tricky. I cannot give an
Yeah, so
answer.
so so I
Yeah.
absolutely agree, and I think that just because you have the weapon capability doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
that you have to use it, and
Mm-hmm.
certainly I'm not advocating that we use it first, you know,
Yeah.
to get that. But I think if you don't go through the process and develop the things that counter
Yeah. Exactly.
threats, then you're being pretty naive because somebody is very likely to use a weapon, especially when they have the superiority, like you're saying. That
Mm-hmm.
very likely that they will use that weapon. And we did with the atomic weapon at the end of World War II. So I mean, it's not we're not above that either. But you got to at least have the capabilities to counter
Exactly.
what
So,
we think may happen.
what's your thoughts on mutually assured destruction? I mean,
So
that,
I think
yeah.
it's worked. It's worked for many years. I think that
Mm-hmm.
that again, as long as somebody doesn't gain the upper hand to the point where it negates that thought,
Mm-hmm.
that theory, then I think it works. And I know throughout the years with Russia, there were times when one side thought they were going to gain an advantage, and it never really happened to the point where that mutual destruction wasn't guaranteed, or at least a great possibility that it would happen. So
Yeah.
I think it kept things in check, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, during, the U-2 that got shot down, during some of the things in Europe with Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia,
Okay,
those type
so
of things.
so we don't have much time, so I
Yeah.
only want to mention one more thing. So, well, it's still related to Russia, right, and Ukraine. What is your perspective on their plans? Like, they want to have access to that area, right? So I guess Crimea and the waters there. So, but I'm not that well read into this topic. So, what are your thoughts on it? What is their objective even? Why are they
Yeah, so I
there?
I think the Russians, just like when they were the Soviet Union, and they did have access through, because that was all part of the Soviet Union, and they had bases, naval bases there in the Crimea and in the into the Black Sea, and I think they still want that, and
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to figure out a way to do that. And I, whether or not they are afraid of the repercussions of any action that they take there, I don't know. I don't know what our government has made, if they've said that that's a red line, that if you cross that, this is going to happen. But I don't know that. But that's the only way that I think you're going to prevent that from happening, is that they understand that it's not going to be acceptable. Because
Uh,
can we stop them from doing it? No, we can't stop them from doing it. Not with the capabilities we have right now. It's kind of like China and Taiwan. Could we stop China from
Perhaps
taking
there's a
Taiwan?
political solution,
Yeah,
honestly,
that
like,
absolutely. I think that's the only way it's going to stop.
and their access to that area. Like, maybe they have very clear reasons. Like, maybe you can just give them access if it's like on a white list of reasons for access. Like, perhaps there's like a middle ground, but we'll see, right? We'll see.
Yeah,
Anything can happen. So yeah, my view on the future of warfare. So it's also related to why I brought you here, right? I think a lot of warfare is going to be virtual. Well, as in people controlling avatars or like remote machines, right? And
right. Kind of like drones.
yeah, pretty much like drones. But speaking of drones, I am working on my own vehicles. You've probably seen a lot of updates, right? So at Suro.ai. And my goal was basically, I kind of want to make something that's even better than an F-22, cheaper to produce, and basically works in every environment. So why it's not like a way to like fight the US, but it's more like to make something for everyone, right? It's like an equalizer, so mutually assured destruction, but for everybody. Well, this doesn't have weapons, but it's more like you don't, you cannot guarantee that everybody dies if you have a device like this. So essentially, it's an all-in-one. It can fly, right? It can float like a boat, and it can submerge. So I've designed it to be fully 3D printable in a lot of ways. The flight mechanic is, um, yeah, I'm not gonna go too far into it. So essentially, we're looking at developing a special system to make these wings actuate, right? That concept is called an ornithopter, but it requires a lot of good material sciences. And besides that, we're also working on robotics, right? So we have a robot, Ray 02. So it's semi-inflatable, and you can even wear it, and anyone who orders it gets a Tesla suit. So what is a Tesla suit, right? It's basically a full body tracked suit, has heating, cooling, and I really love these things. So what I've been thinking of was like, if you're in like a combat situation, right? And you're wearing this suit and maybe like some cameras. The suit has basically it can stimulate your muscles, right, to move in a certain way. It doesn't really hurt, but it does enable you to like move. So my theory is you could basically have an automatic protection system. So essentially, you'd be able to do kung fu and blindly even block every attack. Right? That's what I've been dreaming of. But technically, it's possible. So that's right. And on top of that, yeah, also working on jetpacks, jet suits. Right? So Gravity Industries is our main competitor here. So it's called Gravity.co. Why them, right? So basically, we want to organize this whole gravy, no gravity. Um, we want to organize this jetpack racing league, G0. Like, why is G0? It's basically gravity zero, right? Instead of the Formula One F1, we're going to flip it around and G0. So yeah, that's coming up, right? So I'm developing these things to improve the world. So I want to give people at least the options to like maximize the potential of a good future. Um, but leading people into this path is hard because it's all very far out there in terms of like what normal people would be interested in. But I do feel like all of this would be necessary to live a good life. So essentially, Zero, the company, stands for sustainable routines, right? So uh, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna manage it, but it's just like I need to improve my leadership to make this go faster with fewer mistakes or down the line. So I want to make it so that people get what they need, if you know what I mean. So, and this also ties into the future of warfare, right? I would say it's all going to be drones remote controlled, and the moment that all your drones are gone, people would probably surrender because I mean, why? Yeah, it's pretty hard for your average citizen or average military to even go up against a small autonomous fleet because they would be trained on. They would basically be the best marksman in every bot, right? And the best pilots in every plane. So yeah, that's what I've been working on, and I've also been, um, you know what? Maybe it's even in this world. Let's see if. So I've actually won. Oh, it's not here, but I won the world championships, flying virtual jets at least. So I've just been. I'll just keep you over there. There you go. So essentially, I've been taught how to fly a jet by an actual American pilot.
Wow.
Well, how to, yeah, and fly, land, etc., combat. So I think this is the future of learning anything really. I really enjoy it, honestly.
Yeah, well, and I know a lot of militaries, including the U.S. military, use a lot of simulation to
Hmm.
save money and safely train and do those things. So, so I certainly believe that the training is going to move more towards simulation than it is actual waste using
Yeah.
fuel and ammo and all those things that
Hmm.
you can simulate in a computer simulation.
Exactly. So yeah, that's the future. So let's see. The next topic would be okay. So fully autonomous warfare, right? So the thing is, like, people are love playing games, right? This whole metaverse thing that's coming up, it's being hyped, but I think the big value there is the data. Like, right now, I'm a senior AI developer, right? I have a background at the European Space Agency. In 2019, I actually won a space Oscar there for some developments I've been making on an AI system for safe navigation. So the system navigates you to your destination in the safest route, using the safest route instead of the fastest. But I would still say that. Okay, so essentially, you would be using the data from people playing games or doing a task, right? And after a while, your system is so good that it can take over the job of
So
that person.
it learns.
It learns, yes. And that can go very fast, right? And this metaverse is basically pretty much there already. Like in this game, it's called VRChat. You already have pretty much every task that you would want to do. You can do it. You can even like start cooking at a restaurant, right? And let me just. All right, nice touchdown. There we go. Um, all right, let me just go back and respawn. So yeah. Um, okay, let's. Yeah, there we go. This mirror. Um, oh yeah. Essentially, I'm very distracted now. I'm sorry. So yeah, essentially, autonomous warfare is the future, and it has its benefits and drawbacks. But I would say the net effect would be that we would need less humans to do the same quality of actions, right? So we'd be able to do more with less. Um, but your enemy would be able to do the same, right? So let's just use China and Russia as an example, right? They massively outnumber you in people, but the U.S. probably has more machinery, etc. But the big issue with warfare is usually you run out of good qualified people first, right?
True. Hmm.
So I would say autonomy would help. You have a consistent level of output, and if you at some point it would just be about engineering, in my view. So the country with the best engineers and the mass production facilities, right, would probably win any confrontation. So that's why I developed every system to be fully 3D printable, right, down to every part, pretty much. So all you would need to do is just have 3D printing facilities, so metal 3D printers, etc., and other plastics. Yeah, that's my view of the future right now. So
Yeah,
zero
I
three.
think
Yeah.
that
Oh yeah.
there
Go
are
ahead.
people who would the people who would have an argument is um, that if it goes that way, then you've taken the humans out of the thought process and the targeting process. So
Oh yeah, that's tricky. So the thing is, like, autonomy actually makes it more precise. Instead of just clearing an entire street, you would just have one robot that maybe flies into a room, just zooms in, facially identifies someone, maybe through other means, and then eliminates that person, right? Of course, it's still horrible to do something like that, but I would still say less collateral if you were going to do it anyway is
yeah,
good.
yeah,
So
I
that's a
would
good
agree.
thing. But it so the my main issue is, even with killer bots, AI, is the people behind them. That's who you have to worry about. Even if the entire system is perfect, right? There's no errors. It follows your commands exactly as observed, the main issue is who gives the commands, right? And then it comes down to leadership. So I think we have to first fix leadership before we can even delve into the intricacies of the autonomous systems, because they're probably not going to be the biggest issue. It's all about the people behind that. And like, imagine maybe a person, I don't even want to name them, but you can think of a bad person in history, but having their power amplified by autonomous systems, right?
Yeah.
And then
Right.
it might become unstoppable too, even though they're obviously evil. The entire world is fighting them, but they just win because they have this technological advantage. That's tricky.
Yeah, it is.
Hmm. Okay, but I have a solution for that. Sorry, I'm gonna reveal something to you. Well, and to the world, I guess. Um, Let me just stand here for it. Yeah, it's probably a good idea, honestly. So this thing is by I got this from a person called Oak. Oh, wait a second. Uh, Let me just stand here. Uh, yeah, that's probably better. So there it is. Oh my god. It's also influenced by aperture sciences. So, what do you think?
It's a robot.
It is a robot, but it's
Yeah.
a more well armored one. So,
Right.
for the future of warfare. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
So again, there are treaties, or they're talking about trying to make treaties about that type of thing. I don't think are any treaties right now about armed robots, but I know that there are countries that are trying to make treaties about that. And again, even if you make treaties that you don't use them, then you got to have some kind of defense in case somebody does.
yeah. It's tricky. I would. It's so tricky that there's no right answer. Like,
Yeah.
it's like the prisoner's dilemma, right? So you can like decide, hey, I'm not gonna rat you out, but if they do, then you're the one at risk. Trust is also an issue. Well, actually,
Yes.
I just might have realized the solution. Blockchain technologies, right? So you have like smart contracts, etc. So what if these devices have actual limits that are like um, internationally recognized? So they're only able to be activated in certain conditions, and other countries are also involved in the unlocking of that, right? So we all have to agree, if these conditions are met, then you're allowed to use this capability. And the thing is, like, leadership is could be too slow to make that decision, so you have to set it in stone, right? So those changes could be made at light speed, based on decisions you set beforehand. So it's more like just being able to use it, right? Not that it gets put into action, but more that it's an option, without the risk of other people, other countries at least, feeling the need to make their own because of you having this thing. Okay, it's still iffy. I'm still not sure about that, but these are very ethical questions. And the thing with humans is we like to develop the solution before we even look into the ethics of it. Like, we just do it because we could.
Because we can. Yep.
Yeah, because we can. Okay, so let me change back. Oh, 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 this is funny. No, I'm not gonna go into weird avatars this time. Let's keep it professional. So, oh yeah, so I'm also in full body now. Essentially, you can mimic your entire body. Well, put your entire body into this virtual world, right? And yeah, do do fun stuff. So the next topic, right after zero tree, um, so I think we talked about a lot, but so it's now about your book. So it's not about you; all about you. That's a verse of your book, right? So essentially, you meant it's about selfless service. That's my interpretation of what you meant, by the way. So
Yeah.
like being a parent.
Yeah. So when I wrote that, I wrote, it's not about you. It's all about you, because it's not about you and what kind of title you're going to get, what kind of money you're going to make, all those kinds of things that you get, any privileges. Leaders get those kinds of things generally, and that's okay. But that's not
Mm-hmm.
why we made you the leader.
Exactly.
And if that is why you want to be the leader, then you need to go do something else, because you're not going to be a good leader. It's all about you and how you treat people and how you develop your organization and the culture in your organization to enhance the ability of people to reach their potential. And that's the key to an organization, is not how important you are or how powerful you are as the leader, but that you empower all the people in your organization to reach their potential. And if you do that, that opens up all kinds of doors and opportunities that would never have been there otherwise.
Okay, so I agree. So what's the best way to figure out the power of the people in your organization? Like, what's a good um, method of doing
Yeah.
that?
So I had a boss one time who retired, a four-star general. So obviously way smarter than me. He said, Oak, the way you get to that point in your organization where you include everybody is that you have to, because on the scale of leadership, there's two ends. There's
Mm-hmm.
the far end on one side, where it is micromanaging and all about authority, authoritative leadership. He said that's horrible. Nobody wants to be led that way. And then on the other end, you have chaos. You have Attila the Hun. You
Yeah.
have and you want to get as close to that chaos as you can. And the way you do that is that you give away your authority. You can never give away responsibility. That's yours. You're always the person.
Now I see. So,
But the more authority you give away,
yeah.
the more you empower people and give them the resources to do the things you want them to do and give
Oh
them
my
the
God.
authority to make it happen. Now
Yeah.
you've included them into the organization. And that does two things. You're using their knowledge and their experience, and now they believe that they are a valued part of your organization, and they got buy-in.
Now I see. So I think a lot of people misrepresent the function of a leader. All you're basically doing is connecting, well, the skills to the power to leverage those skills, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, because again, if you think that you as the leader, you're the one that's going to get your organization to wherever you want to take it in 5 years from now, sadly mistaken. It's the people who work in that organization,
Mm-hmm.
who work for you, that are going to get you there. And the only way they're going to get you there is if they know what the vision is, and then you give them the tools and the authority to get them there, to get.
Okay. So I think I got the full picture now, right? So the most important thing is the vision, right? And while you're doing your task, the people that you're leading would come up to you and say, "Hey, I would like to do this thing because of this reason," right? And it's your job to like quickly, yeah, make use of that, right? So that's the thing. So clear vision, then people know, hey, I can do this, right? They come to you. They have a clear path, and you're basically the interface for them to have their like qualities leveraged and empowered, right? So
Right.
okay, I'm gonna apply that too. That's clear. So yeah, so there's one issue, right? That I've been noticing. So putting the good of the organization above you. How do you know that you should? Like, not every organization might be ethically sound, right? For example, if you're in the military, you might not always be the good guy. So what do you do?
So I believe that leaders do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Now we're
Yeah.
assuming that you've been raised and you have some morals and you have some values, and that you know what the right thing is. But I think that, if we're producing leaders who don't have those kinds of things, then we're in trouble anyway, and it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that leaders have to understand that it's their job to do what's right, no matter what, even if it's
Hmm.
not in their own best interest. They still have to do what's right. And we all have probably run into those situations where we had to make a decision that didn't help us, but it helped somebody in your organization, or it helped the organization as a whole. And we got to make those decisions, even when they're not a pleasant. It's not pleasant to make those decisions. We still got to do it.
Hmm. Okay, that's a good point. So, yeah, I already mentioned the book is very similar to efficient software, right? So essentially, it's like getting the right information to the right places in the right time. So my main issue, right? It's just me being um very busy, and I have millions of ideas. So what I do is I just write all of them down, right? And plan them in order in some way, but it's still very hard to like have the discipline to do all of the micro tasks for these major tasks. So how do they cultivate discipline in the military, and how does it stick?
Yeah. So well, first of all, I think that the more important piece of it is self discipline.
Yeah, yeah,
Anybody can be
self-discipline.
disciplined. uh, somebody
Oh,
standing over
mhm.
you making you do things, that's discipline. And that's there's places that need to take place, and that needs to be done. But as a leader, you need to be self-disciplined. So you got to be able to do the things that you got to do, because
Mhm.
it's the right thing to do, because it needs to get done, and not because somebody's going to check up
Hey,
on it
so
and
could
check
it
on
be
you.
that you also have to lead yourself using those same principles? You need to have a
Absolutely you do.
vision, right? Needs to
Absolutely,
be
you do.
clear.
I
Yeah.
mean, you got to have that self discipline. Because I always tell people, look, it's great to be motivated, and motivation is great, and motivation gets us to do things, but we're not going to be motivated every day. Nobody is motivated every day.
Hmm.
So self discipline is what, when you're not motivated that day, self discipline is what makes you do what you would have normally done because you were motivated to do it.
All right, that's perfect. All right, so the final thing is advice for young people, right? Do you have any advice for young people?
Yeah, I
Maybe, yeah, this, yeah, go on.
yeah. So I always, two things. Number one, education. I always tell people, I don't care what else you do, education is the most important part of what you're going to do at this point in your life. Because what you're doing, what those young men and women are doing today in their education in high school and junior high school and in college, is going to determine what they can do later on in their life for the most part. So you got to get an education. And then, like we just discussed, you got to develop some self discipline, because in my opinion, life is all about choices and consequences.
Yep.
Every decision you make, every decision you make has consequences. So you have to get to the point in your life where you're making good decisions that give you good consequences. Because you make a decision, it has a consequence, good or bad, but it has a consequence. And you got to get to the point in your life where you're getting good consequences and not bad ones.
Yeah, exactly. So what I did in my life, at least, is um, every decision that I make has like separate effects, right? That positively influence my other plans, right? So essentially, it gets easier if your vision is so cohesive that it all aligns, right? So this thing over here would directly impact this thing over here if it's a
Second and third
success.
level effects is what,
Yeah,
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 absolutely.
exactly. Okay,
And
so that's
you know
yeah.
how I got to that point in my life where
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was making better decisions is my dad one time told me, he said, "Son, every time you're going to make a decision, think of one thing. Would your mom want you to would you want your mom to know that you just made that decision and did that?" And that kind of gets you on the
That's a
straight and
good
narrow.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that's an actual thing. It's called the mom test. Even when you're
Is it?
explaining a new project, an
Yeah,
idea.
I didn't know that, but because
Yeah.
my dad told me that 100 years
Mm-hmm.
ago when I was a little kid.
Okay, so my goal of this meeting, well, podcast meeting, was to improve my understanding of like timeless leadership, and I think I did. So yeah, anyone watching this, I hope they manage to become a good leader, so the future will be better,
Yeah,
right?
I appreciate you having me on here,
Mm-hmm.
O'Brien, and I'm glad, and I hope we help somebody. I told somebody the other day, somebody wanted me to be on their podcast, and I said, fine. I said, well, how many people did you generally have? And they said, well, I just started it. I've only got about 35 people who watch it,
Mm-hmm.
so it may not be worth your time. And I said, if we help one person, it's worth our time.
Exactly, and that good that that one person can create would just keep on giving, right?
Absolutely,
So it has
absolutely.
network effects. All right. So could you tell the audience more about your book, and then we can, yeah, continue leading
Yeah.
the world. Mhm.
Yep. So you can go to either Amazon. Amazon carries my book, and it's the title of the book is Your Leadership Legacy: Becoming the Leader You Were Meant to Be. Um, and you can get it on Amazon, or you can go to my website www.ltcoakmcculloch .com, and there's a link there that will take you to my book as well.
All right. I'll put that link also in the description, so just send it to me later.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for coming, and maybe we should talk in the future. Like, I have a lot of stuff that I would want
Absolutely. I'd
to,
love to come back and
yeah,
talk to you
mention.
again, Brian.
Yeah. All right. So have a nice day. Bye bye.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Bye.
Bye.
Uh, okay. Yeah, it was a good meeting. So thanks for watching, and enjoy this one more thing.